Hello and welcome to this podcast with Sundeep Waslekar. Earlier this month, Sundeep had traveled to South Africa to understand how a country with a painful past and a powerful moral voice is thinking about the future of artificial intelligence. His encounters from Joburg to Pretoria to Cape Town form the spine of a new column for Founding Fuel. Today, we're going to go behind the scenes. Hi, Sandeep.
Hi, Indrajit. How are you?
All well. Thank you. Your column, I'll dive straight in. Your column opens with this training facility, if I may call it that, or maybe there's a better way to describe it, where teenagers learn robotics in Joburg. Tell us about your visit to that facility. What struck you most about that visit?
IG, former president of the Republic of South Africa, Galema Motlanthe, he has set up a foundation. And in this foundation, he had the focus on building the youth of South Africa for a bright future. And and his focus is really on training, young kids, 13, 14, 15 years old from poor localities in Johannesburg area. And he has this foundation in a really plush Houghton area of Johannesburg. And they come there and they have trainers and they have very modern facilities and they impart training in robotics, also in writing codes, software codes, and they're just 13, 14 years old. And when I went there, the kids had just left, but the tutors were there and all the facilities were there. And it was just amazing to see. And I saw some videos of the kids playing with the robotic. I saw some of the robots they had made. And and I just felt so uplifted to see this happening.
Brilliant, brilliant. But you travel around the world. Why did this experience stand out for you?
I would say that South Africa has gone through a lot of difficulty.
Got it.
They had serious electricity shortages for 15 years from 2008. Not to talk about their past difficulties like apartheid
So,
and everything else.
so,
And the moment they came out of electricity shortages, like in 2023, so from 2008 to 2023, they had the electricity shortages. And the moment it came out, they started focusing on the most modern technologies. And
wonderful.
President Motlanthe, I've met President Motlanthe a few times, and every time he just talks about education and building the future of less privileged children. Every time we had met in London and other places outside South Africa, and every time his focus is. He has in fact visited India also to see some of the projects in the north of India,
Wonderful.
where underprivileged children are given different kinds of training. But he has focused not on just the basic literacy, but on training them to equip them with the modern technology, so robotics, writing codes, and now he's going to equip them with AI skills.
Terrific, terrific. It's great to hear that. I just wanted to zoom out, Sandeep, and essentially see if how this moment could help us connect with South Africa's larger ambition on AI. What was the perspective that you were left with?
Well, everybody I met, President Motlanthe, other political leaders, they started literally in 23 after the uh, electricity problem was solved, because you can't think of AI unless you have enough electricity. And but already in 2023 they had prepared a policy document. It was rolled out in the parliament. It's being discussed in the parliament. I spoke with a very close advisor of President Ramaphosa, who has held key positions in the South African government and the ANC, the ruling political party. And I met President's ministerial advisor, Ramagopa, and they are also enthusiastic about taking South Africa ahead despite all their limitations, physical limitations and resource limitations. And they want to make the best of their diplomatic advantage. South Africa is chairing G20 in November. They are in lead position in many Pan-African forums. and they want to use all of that to be the rule uh, shaper of AI, not just rule takers of AI. And the document which they have rolled out in the parliament is very clear. It's clear on two things. One, they say that South Africa must try to reach the highest bracket in the world by building their own capacity. So that's one. So they are realistic that they first have to build a capacity. And second, but also in setting standards for global governance of AI, which is very interesting because just yesterday, President Trump came out with the America Action Plan, and he also said that one of the key objectives of America's AI Action Plan is to take a lead in setting global standards. And we have South Africa, which is at the other end, which has got all kinds of resource limitations and even technological limitations if you compare to United States. And that also, that country also has an ambition to set global standards. So that's something very interesting.
Yes. Very interesting. So both two things. One is you speak about ambition, very clearly articulated at the very top of the government. You also spoke about the whole intent to be a rule shaper, which is also very, very fascinating as well. I'm just going to move to another issue which your column talks about, and you use a very striking phrase, algorithmic apathy. What does that mean in the South African context, Sandeep?
Well, in South Africa, they are really concerned about the discrimination that is inbuilt in the current LLMs like ChatGPT, Grok, uh, and Gemini, Claude, all LLMs. And this kind of discrimination is racial, it's gender, and it is social. So, by and large, say the image of a successful businessman is perceived to be male and white. The image of a bank robber is supposed to be, black, and that kind of racial discrimination. And it's built in many different ways. You can feel it if you really play around with it, LLMs or their chat versions. Now, South Africans are really upset. And they want to remove this discrimination. That is their priority. So they are building a local language LLM, but I don't think that will help to remove the discrimination in the big LLMs owned by the Americans and the Chinese. Because they can create a local language LLM. It's called LLEPA. They are building it, but that will create some kind of a local capacity, and maybe it will create a fair system for local government services. But the international situation doesn't change, and they're very
Got
concerned.
it.
Yeah.
Got it. But you did, like you just said, you did meet some technologists who are kind of working on local language models. Do you see that? Are they making progress? And do you see this as part of a larger global counter narrative?
No, there's a guy called Vukosi Mariwate. He is a professor at Pretoria University. He's very young and he's chair of the data science department there. And he has taken a lead with some other young professionals to create this local language model, which is being trained on 12 different South African languages. We were in touch with him. I didn't meet him because I flew into South Africa, and the very next day he flew to Boston. But I met some of the other people in the tech community in South Africa. They were praising this quite a lot. For example, the one of the godfathers of South African AI academia is Arthur Mutumbara. He is the director of the Institute for the Future of Knowledge at the University of Johannesburg. He mentioned it to me, and I told him I was already in touch with Vukosi, and a lot of other people in the government and elsewhere. And so they are quite satisfied with the progress it has done. It's not a large language model, it's a small language model. And
Got it.
perhaps there is a lesson for it for other developing countries. Every time you don't need a LLM and spend all the resources there. Maybe you can do with a small language model. And that's what the South Africans are developing.
Sure, sure. So I just wanted to step back and look at the whole policy space. You've interacted, I'm guessing, with a whole range of South African policymakers.
Right.
What surprised you or impressed you the most?
Well, I didn't meet President Ramaphosa, but short of that, I met a lot of senior people. And what was really interesting was the enthusiasm amongst the political leaders to create a future for South Africa in the leadership of the global governance of AI. So both in terms of technological competence as well as in terms of diplomatic leadership, and that was uh, quite interesting. I'll give you an example. I was in Pretoria, and the Blade Nazimandek, he's the science and technology minister. He was in Cape Town. And even before I went, Blade kept writing to me, the minister kept writing to me saying that, let's meet in Cape Town. And I told him I just can't come to Cape Town. On those days, I was planning to go to Cape Town little later. And finally, on the day I was in Pretoria, and the minister was held up in meetings with the president, was in Cape Town also, in fact, that day. He was in meetings with the president and some cabinet work. And he was like, every few hours we were exchanging messages to see how we can meet. And finally, he got his chief advisor to fly to Pretoria to meet me for a cup of coffee, to discuss strategies as to how South Africa can take a, a lead role, or can play a very important role, or make a contribution at the global level in the governance of AI. So that shows the seriousness of these guys.
Got it. Got it. You've also, I'm guessing, had some conversations about the upcoming G20 that South Africa will lead. So, what's the opportunity do you think for South Africa at both the G20 or even the BRICS platform? Do you think their Ubuntu philosophy can find resonance globally?
G20 communique is drafted with input from many expert groups. And as the chair of G20, they have got input from 300 different expert groups. So I don't think it will be possible for South Africa alone to do much to give a shape to AI's global governance, because the G20 expert groups, they are really like confining the role of AI to uh, technological access and issues at the very grassroots level. Whereas the South African aspirations are really to play a role at the global level. And I don't think the G20 communique will have any possibility, but the president might bring it up in his own speech. And going beyond G20, they will advocate it in different forums.
Got it. Got it. Now, Sandeep, you've kind of ended your column on a very powerful note, that the fact that South Africa chose to dismantle its own nuclear arsenal voluntarily. But the point is, can it now lead the world on ethical AI? Do you believe that?
Well, South Africa has taken some very bold decisions. Uh, they dismantled nuclear weapons. After that, they dismantled apartheid. And they have been very bold in promoting solidarity of like-minded countries. They have been very vocal and very active on issues of establishing justice in the Middle East. So they have shown some guts despite their limited resources, and they can see that the way the AI is being developed, it has a possibility of creating algorithmic apartheid, which is like the West would like to produce the products and services, and the global South countries should just become consumers and uh, suppliers of labor. And that's the direction in which it is going. In fact, not only global South, even Europe is being pushed into that direction. So the South Africans would like uh, to reverse that. South Africans realize that the global South countries should take a lead in shaping global governance, and they understand. But that also means addressing the concerns of the top scientists on existential risk of advanced AI models, and they understand that that global lead means not only creating AI models for basic services, but also creating or having a ownership in the AI models that contribute to scientific discovery and advancement of science. So they understand all that, and they're very sensitive to that, and and they have a desire to. They have their resources are limited, but they have a strong political desire and they have diplomatic capital. So let's see how they play it.
Got it. Got it. So if and last question, if there's one big message that from your visit that stood out for you, what would it be? If you could summarize, please, in 15 seconds.
That your limitations should not stop you from aiming high.
Got it. Got it. No, that's a lovely note to end this conversation on. Thank you, Sandeep. This was both inspiring at one level and also pragmatic and realistic and sobering. For more, do read Sandeep's full column, The Ubuntu of Artificial Intelligence, only on Founding Fuel. We've shared the link below, and this is also embedded in that same article. So, below this audio. So, thank you again.
Thank you,
Lovely
Indrajit.
catching up.